Welcome to Japan on Film Podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine. I'm an author and a teacher who's been living and working in Japan for over 10 years. And every episode of this show, I bring you another Japanese movie with a guest, and we talk about it for a little bit and tell you a little bit about what we thought. And today I've got a new guest who he was supposed to come on last season, but unfortunately the scheduling didn't quite work out. We were able to get him on this season, though, and that is Dan Clarke. Dan, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming on. So, first thing I want to do is I want to give you kind of a chance to tell people a little bit about yourself.
Right. For a start, I guess. Well, for about Japanese films or just in general?
In
I just
general,
have.
and then in Japanese films.
Right. Oh well, I guess what do I do? Well, I'm kind of well always been into films. I kind of it's carried into my job in a way. I install or kind of fit and install home cinemas. So is that kind of link the idea? And I work in theatre too, or I did until lockdown. That's kind of put that on hold for a while.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess and that's it. I'm from Manchester in the UK, so I'm not sure. I've listened to quite a few of your shows, but have you had many UK guests on before? I'm
I
not
want to say at least one. I think the first guest we
right.
had on was from the UK. I think he was from London.
Right. So yeah, the ones I've listened to, well, I always think when I hear these shows and you hear someone from Manchester, especially the accent stands out quite a lot. Um, so yeah, and I guess I don't know what else to say really.
Mm.
You get asked about talk about yourself. So yeah, and I mean with Japanese films, I think it all began. Well, actually, I'd say what I was going to say it began with Battle Royale actually back in what was that 2000?
Yeah,
That just
1990,
kind of
yeah,
reignited.
1998, 2000, something like that. It came
Yeah,
out.
yeah, and I just by chance I'd been to HMV here in the UK, and I don't know why, but I was going to my friend's. I'm going to stay with my friend who's at university at the time. I just picked up a random film. I thought I'll give this a go, and it kind of reignited my kind of interest in that I kind of didn't know I had when I was
Hmm.
younger. And when I was really small, I'd always watch animation, and I think my mum had taped it from TV
Oh,
on a
okay.
VCR when I was little, and I used to watch it over and over again. And it turns out, and I didn't realize what it was until I was walking through Manchester one day, and there's a big screen, and they were playing the trailer for Spirited Away.
Oh, okay.
That looks like this one that I always used to watch, and it was Laputa or Castle in the Sky.
Oh, okay.
So and from that point, it kind of related to that. I kind of started doing my research and kind of thought, oh yeah, no, I really do like this stuff, and I went back and I linked it all together. But yeah, but then as with and then with that big gap in mind, then it came Battle Royale, and there was that whole kind of era then where The Ring came out, and it
Right.
was like in the early 2000s when
Hmm.
it was like I don't know, it seemed like there's another explosion in Japanese horror, um, and that kind of thing, and that's where I kind of really got back into Japanese kind of films,
Hmm.
um, and I guess from that point on, I've just watched anything I could really,
Yeah.
especially stuff with Takeshi Kitano in.
Hmm. Yeah, that
His
was my era when I came into was early 2000s, and you're
right,
right.
right,
That was that era when there was the big explosion of the J horror,
mhm,
the ghost stuff like The Ring and The Grudge and all
yeah,
that. But then we also had the more extreme stuff, like the more extreme horror, like the stuff that Mike was doing, or like Battle
right,
Royale and
yeah,
that kind of stuff. And there was just like this huge explosion in like the DVD market of like all these publishers. Like Tartan was a big one, I remember. It was putting out
right, yeah,
tons of different DVDs back then.
yeah,
and
yeah,
uh and yeah, and also just like the hunt of like trying to find, because this is before streaming services or anything like that.
right,
So,
right.
or even before like really decent internet. So most of
Yeah,
us, when we were trying to find stuff to watch, it was almost always you know Hong Kong bootleg sites and scrounging eBay and that kind of thing.
right, yeah, it's true. Yeah, I got some off eBay, but I've got to say though, it was HMV in like Manchester, UK, and I was from like a town outside, well, just
Mhm.
outside of Manchester, and we had I can't remember the name of it now. They've since gone in. I think well, music. It was Music Zone. That was what it was
Mhm.
called. And amazingly enough, I'd go in there and I'd find all sorts, Itchy the Killer and things like
Mhm.
that. And I couldn't believe it. So I'd buy that. My friend was really into Itchy the Killer, and I found the weird ones, like like Cairo, stuff like that. Do you know the
Right. Yeah. 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 I remember
and
Cairo.
One Miss
Cairo was one
Call?
of those. Yeah. Pulse.
Yeah,
In the U.S. release. Yeah. That was a really interesting movie. That's one I
mm.
eventually got to get to at some point.
It was a weird one, that, but I really liked that. And then One Miss Call was the one I kind of really liked, but because the Ring kind of got you in there, but
Hmm.
I diverged off. And One Miss Call was a great one for me because I was also a fan of like Anna Nagata, who was in Battle Royale, and she was kind
Hmm.
of in that. She did a few things, and also I think I can't remember her name. She was also in Battle Royale, the main kind of bad girl. I
Oh
think
yeah.
she was
Yeah.
in,
She plays Mitsuko.
yeah, I
Yukashi.
can't remember.
No,
Yeah.
not Yukashi. That was someone else.
Oh,
Sorry. She was in so many different actresses.
yeah. John, I always forget her name. But yeah, no, she was that too. And I think through actors and different actresses, I kind of found other things. And I also, and kind of, someone showed me, just slightly off
Koshi.
topic.
Sorry. Koshi Basaki was the one
Yes.
in One Missed Call and Battle Royale.
Right, right. Yeah, that's because because from her as well, and my friend introduced me, going slightly off topic, ish. I got into TV dramas.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you've ever seen Good Luck.
No, I haven't seen a lot of the TV stuff, so it's pretty much
Right.
mostly the movies.
Right, because she was in that. I recognize it, so I'll give that a watch. And it also had in, because I was going to mention, originally we were going to talk about Blade of the Immortal,
Hmm.
as in, what's the guy called, actor? It
But
was a really, do you know who?
in Blade of the Immortal,
Yeah. Uh,
trying to recall. I don't remember him offhand.
he,
Um, but I know.
he
But
seems, yeah. I think we can, I don't have,
in fact, was and Shibasaki. She was in Blade of the Immortal as well, or am I thinking
yeah.
of? Oh, okay, yeah.
No. Is she in that too? Let me just, so I normally have this able to look up Blade of the Immortal.
So it was Takuya Kimura played the main
That's
character, and no, Shibasaki was not in that one.
No, she was in something similar though, I think, wasn't she?
She
I
was
can't.
in the American version of 47 Ronin.
Right. Is that the one that's got Keanu was in?
Yes, yeah, that was the
Right.
one with
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves, and I'm trying to see if there's anything else big that she's been in. Uh, she was in Sinking of Japan, the remake of Sinking of Japan in
Right.
2006, and also Memories of Matsuko. And but I think the only other, at least for just going, well, there's she was also in there's another movie. I'm not sure if it's out next, but Baragaki Unbroken Samurai. It looks like she's in that.
Ah, right.
And
Okay.
but I think 47 Ronin. Just looking from the titles anyway, 47 Ronin may
Hmm.
have been the only samurai movie she's been in.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because to be honest, yeah, I've not seen a lot of her in some of the things. I guess I guess, but yeah, no, yeah, Takuya Kimura. He was in that TV show, which I do recommend. It's Good Luck, about a pilot, and she was in that too.
Mm-hmm.
And that was brilliant. That kind of got me. Then I went down a path of watching all of his kind of TV dramas, and just from kind of like following different actors and actresses, and discovered some really great stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
With
Shibasaki. I think she mostly does TV. Look, because she's got tons of TV credits.
mm, mm. I think she's been in a couple of the ones that I can't remember the titles now.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite some time. Once
Yeah.
again, they were even hard. They were hard to find. I would
Mm-hmm.
manage to. I had a friend who would like he'd bring stuff back from Hong Kong, and then I'd Google it and I'd find stuff on the back in the kind of torrent stuff,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but then that was the best way to find the things. But yeah, and yeah, and I think that was kind of yeah, the kind of path I took for kind of discovering things. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's great.
And you
And
mentioned
then
that you became a fan of Kitano, and
yes,
we're talking about his movie Kikujiro
mm.
today. So what brought you to Kitano?
Well, it was the first thing I ever noticed in life. It was Battle Royale,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really surprised then to find out that he was the Takeshi from Takeshi's Castle.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
So if you've watched you've seen Takeshi's Castle, the whole game show.
No, but I've heard of it.
Right. Because it was big it was big in Japan back in the 80s, I guess. But
Oh,
then
right. Yeah. Yes,
it was a
game show. Yeah.
crazy, yeah. And it got played on like some random cable show,
Hmm.
cable channel here in the UK, and I'd always managed to catch it. And then at the very end part of the game, they have these little go karts to drive around in, and they have the main car has a big paper mache head of like someone. But the very early series, you watch it, and he's actually there taking part. So he's driving around in his car, and
Hmm.
I got that's the same guy. So and then I just once I just kind of tracked down his films in the same kind of way. So I watched Hanabi, also through Joe Hisaishi's music, because that then
Hmm.
links to, lots of the Miyazaki animations from Studio
Yeah.
Ghibli.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of mixed in. So I'd hear of this and think, oh, I really like that soundtrack. Let's go. So I actually heard the soundtrack to Hanabi before I saw the film,
Hmm.
and then have you seen Hanabi?
In fact, we covered it earlier this season. So
Ah,
so
great.
like we record these episodes in advance, but when the season
Yeah.
starts coming out, you'll that's, I believe, like the second or third episode, I think.
Ah, great, because that's probably like one of my favorites when it comes
Hmm.
to Tiki films. But yeah, but the first one I saw after Battle Royale was Kikujiro.
Hmm. Okay.
And yeah.
So what were your so let's just jump into it then. What was some of your first experiences watching Kikujiro, like your memories of watching it the first time?
Um, I don't know, I just straight away I just remember I just loving it.
Hmm.
It was because I think with the first thing you notice, I guess if you're not used to it and you watch any of like Takeshi's films, is the kind of it is such like a dynamic. You go from there's a lot of action. Depending which one you watch, you've got all this action going on that might be violent or
Hmm.
quite often violent, but then it'll just flip and it'll just be like really still, really peaceful.
Right.
And a lot of his techniques. I mean, it's you don't see it that often these days, but he almost breaks the fourth wall sometimes. People like look straight into the camera,
Hmm.
and it has these long kind of lingering shots, and it becomes something really thoughtful. So all of a sudden you kind of notice it, and then I mean you do really. I don't think it spoils it, but then you are kind of realizing you're watching a film, but it's also kind of reflective in a way. I don't know. It's a real, and I really enjoy that kind of. 'Cause a lot of the time watching, just rewatched it. Might have been the time
Hmm.
just a day or two ago, and sometimes it's almost like he's painting a picture. So sometimes some of the scenes I think function almost like it wants to be a painting. So nothing happens. They'll stand there on the beach with the boy in Kikujiro,
Hmm.
and it's not posed, but it's kind of posed, but it's not. But it's just like a painting in itself. It's
Yeah, a lot of the films Mike made, because after he had the motorcycle accident in
right.
'94, and then after that is when he really got into painting and really started like reflecting on his life. So you see a lot of the
Yeah.
movies that came out in that time period, like in like the 5 years or so after that. It's a
Mm,
lot of this much slower, much more introspective types of
mm,
movies, like Hanabi, like Kikujiro.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And I think it's his paintings as well. Any paintings you see in a lot of his work are his personal painting, which he does in
Right.
Battle Royale, and the ones you see at the opening credits of Kikujiro too.
Yeah, and on all throughout Hanabi, those are all his paintings in that.
Right. Right. The firework and yes. Yeah.
Right,
You're right.
yeah. And
Mm,
then and if you watch his Zatoichi film, like he used CGI blood for all the scenes
right.
that because he specifically wanted to control how the blood flashed across the screen, how it would move, how it would flow, like a painter controlling a brush.
Right. I think I read somewhere. Didn't he say that he wanted the blood to be like a blossoming flower,
I
uh,
believe so. Yeah, yeah.
something
That
like
that
that?
that quote sounds very familiar.
Yeah, and that's another great film. Just that, and the
Yeah.
whole bit at the end of Zatoichi, the whole dance sequence, and
Yes.
it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed kind of
Yeah. We
his
covered that at the tail end of the last season, actually. So
right.
so
I'm not
uh,
listening to it.
So yeah, you should track down that episode because we covered
Yeah.
it with a guy who studied like all the Zatoichi films. So for me, it was
Right.
me coming into it with the perspective only seeing that one. So it was good
Uh,
to get both perspectives on that movie.
That sounds interesting. Yeah, I've not. I've only caught maybe like a couple of
Hmm.
different Zatoichi films, but I'll listen to that. That sounds really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, and he talks about a lot of the different Zatoichi films and how
Mm.
this one compares to them, and some of the ones that came after too, and also. So yeah, it's a really good. It was a really fun episode, and to really get kind of a crash course in Zatoichi.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I'd definitely give that a listen.
Mhm.
Um,
Now, I saw this movie. It was my wife who introduced me to this movie because this is
mm,
one of her favorite movies.
right,
And
right, right.
like to be honest, I thought there's a lot of charm in it. It is
Mm,
it's really funny in a lot of places.
mm,
Um, I do kind of like the themes of like alienation and that they play with, and we can
mm.
get more into that as we continue talking. But overall, I did feel it was a little bit long, and it's kind of the same feeling I had with Hanabi. It was a little bit too much of those static, drawn out shots.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And it'd been a while since I watched it, so like the other night I gave it a watch, and at first I wasn't because I expressed to you that it was my favorite one of his films. I was thinking, is it still my favorite? Because there were
Hmm.
some parts of it as I started through it thinking, no, it's not quite what I remember. And I didn't at first. I'd forgotten about it, and I wasn't seeing the charm. But like you say, it's quite long, and it's
Hmm.
like it gets past that middle section. I think once you kind of figures because at first you get a lot of his Beat Takeshi bringing back a lot of his like humor at first. He has to get his slapstick in, and you get that
Right.
when they go to the races, and it's okay. And you think, okay, fair enough, get past all this. Then you get to the point where he goes there and he sees his mum,
Yes.
but she has
Yeah.
a family, and I kind of
Hmm.
forgot how really like tragically like sad that is, and that
Hmm.
from onwards there, and you do start to see the change in Kikuchi Takeshi's character,
Hmm.
and that's then when that charm starts to come out. I thought, yeah, I do remember now why I like this film so much.
Yeah.
Um, and like you say, even though it's really long and they spend a lot of time, but he meets those people, and most of it then is just them camping and just giving the boy like a really nice kind of summer break.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but you know, and I can't remember how I got to that point now, but no, I it kind of, and I gave it a chance, and no, yeah, it did have all that charm that I do originally remember it having, even though, like you say, it does seem long, yeah.
Hmm.
And there's definitely parts probably that could be
Yeah,
trimmed.
it could have done with because he edited this himself. I noticed in the credits, and
Right, I'm not, yeah, I just noticed that too, yeah, written, directed, and edited, so
yeah, so
interesting,
I
yeah,
think it might have been better served if he had someone else editing it
right,
and kind
right,
of tell him like, you know what, Takeshi, you don't really need all of this stuff in there.
yeah,
But yeah, it's funny what you said in there really kind of made sense to me because the first time I watched it, I remember really liking it because this is my second time watching it.
right,
My wife first showed it to me, I think sometime last year maybe,
mm,
and first time watching it, yeah, I enjoyed. I remember really enjoying it, but watching it the second time, it was a different feel. Like I did notice the charm and stuff like that,
mm,
and I did think the comedy still hold up pretty well for the most part. I
yeah,
felt. I
yeah,
thought
yeah,
which is rare in comedies and even rarer in Japanese comedies. So I thought that
right,
was
yeah,
definitely a good thing. Uh,
mm,
but for me, it was the second half where I thought that they were. I do agree that it is nice seeing Kikujiro kind of starting to show this softer side and kind of like showing affection in the only way he really
mm,
knows how. And you
mm,
see that whole parallel between him and Masao, the boy, and the whole
yeah,
thing with like
mm,
his mother ran out on him as well.
yes, yeah, yeah.
And they also have that really nice symmetry where you know Masao goes to see his mother. He only looks at her from afar and he doesn't interact with her. He doesn't even let her know she's there. And then
Mm,
you see the
right.
same thing with Kikujiro seeing his mother in the rest home.
Yes, yes, no, that's true. Yeah, I've forgotten that.
And
Yeah, no, that was a nice parallel.
I really like that stuff.
Mm,
But I think some of the like the games and stuff they're playing during camping, I thought that was the stuff that kind of went on a little bit too long. I think we'd trim some of that down.
right.
And I think it would have been, or maybe even cut some of those sequences out completely, and you would have gotten the same effect.
Yeah, no, definitely. That I would say that's true. yeah, you do get the idea at that certain point, and the and the I was going to say, sorry. Yeah, you play the game, you get the idea, and I'm not sure if they're just trying to then, if Takeshi was just trying to show, because like you say, we did get it, show that his character is changing and softening up. Well, softening up, but it's only up to a certain point, because he's still the kind of the bully that he is, and he gets him to do what he wants. But no, it's true, and another thing, yeah, it just popped into my head then. Looking at it from a personal point of view, because the difference between my first watch and the second time I watched it is that I had kids in that time between it, and I think maybe that's just more impactful when you have a child yourself and you see that and you think, well, how you think about how would I, because all the way through, I guess the first time I watched it, I maybe I looked at it from the point of Kikujiro more, about possibly. Now second time round, thinking about trying to put your children in those positions and how they're feeling, and you want to be provided with those memories. I guess it's about those memories in the end, because of what had happened. Kikujiro is just kind of give this boy these memories this summer and so on, and it just kind of reflected on me in a different way. Second time watching it.
You're right. That's a very good point, because I became a father between the viewings as well, and yeah, that stuff didn't stand out to me as much the first time, and it wasn't even like a conscious thing. It just kind of happened. I remember thinking a lot more about, like, well, what if my daughter was in this situation? What would I? Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And that's really interesting. Yeah, because this movie was heavily influenced by Kitano's father, who was also named Kikujiro, and who yeah, he was but he was a gambler, and he was always kind of struggling to provide and pay the bills, and then he died when Kitano was quite young, I believe. I'm not sure exactly when, but all I know is that he died when Kitano was young, and so he kind of based his performance and the character in general kind of on his father. So I think in a way it's kind of like Kitano trying to come to terms with his own childhood and his own, and kind of like him maybe projecting an idealized version of what he hoped his father could be, because obviously he knows, like, his father wouldn't have been an affectionate man or whatever like that. So, but he tried to find like a way to make that work with Kikujiro in the film, and you kind of see that when, because you're right, he's he doesn't soften completely, right? He's still a hard ass in a lot of ways, and I think it's just because he doesn't know how to be anything else.
That's it, yeah.
And so instead he tries to find these other ways, because we see him with the tattoo, so it's obviously he's had some connection to the Yakuza in the past. If I recall correctly, the tattoo's not fully completed though, right?
I think that's right, yeah. I think it is. They don't show everybody. I'm not 100% sure, because I'm not is it, I don't know whether it needs to be fully colored in, or does it need to cover more of the back, or does it need to be fully colored in? I can't remember.
Usually it has to, I believe it's usually, I mean, it might depend on the type, but I believe it has to be fully colored.
Right.
And there were definitely, it definitely didn't seem fully colored. So I definitely got the sense that the kind of backstory that Kikujiro has is he was in the Yakuza and had gotten out at some point. Maybe he went to prison or what, but for some reason he ended up getting out of that business. But you see, he still got those instincts, right? Like when they go to the kids that are bullying Masao, and he demands for their money. Then when they get, and his wife's like, "What are you doing? You're mugging them." It's like he doesn't really know how to do anything else in that situation.
And he wasn't very, and it seems as well as he goes through, like he talks the talk, but he's not a very good Yakuza. Like he threatens people. He holds his own a little bit, but he still gets beaten up. He threatens that the cab guy, smashes his window, and he just keeps getting like thrown to the ground by that guy. So even though he tries doing that, he still can't quite get that right either. But no, I didn't realize that's interesting.
Yeah, and and also with the gambling stuff, like he's a
Yeah.
terrible gambler, right?
Right.
And he and his wife even warns him, right? She's like only use this money for the traveling. She's like, don't fuck around. And then he does exactly the opposite. The first thing he does.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, and that's, I mean, yeah, like you said, that bit kind of it's funny. It goes on a little bit, but no, it's a great way to kind of learn about, the way he is and kind of what to expect from him. But it's nice to see that. It is nice to see that turnaround as it goes on. It might be something else then too. They brought in. Oh, that was it. I had a quick read of it as well, and the guy it just reminded me then as we get further on. The guy he's at the bus stop. They bring in the guy who he turns up and he steals his little rice kind of packages from.
Right. Yeah, the rice balls.
Comedy partner from the past, one of the beats.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize until, and that's probably why they play off a little bit with each other there, and he's like having a bit of a dig at him and so on. But that's just a little fact that I'd not realized, and before I forget, I thought I'd mention.
But yeah, but one of the things that also stood out is the alienation, the kind of like everybody that kind of helps Masao out in this. It's really some kind of outsider in society, and there is kind of this theme running through that you've got one of these two choices in life, right? You've got these, you may fit in more with the outsiders, but that's not a life that's really going to lead anywhere, type of thing. Like we've got Kikujiro or the bikers or the poet and all that, and they're just and these characters, they're really it betrays the typecast that you think of these types of characters, at least within a Japanese context, right? So
Right.
Kitano being like a former gangster, the biker guys who are they look tough, but they're actually just like total pushovers. The poet who's just kind of like this weird guy, and then but all of them, they're they give Masao this kind of summer that he'll remember, and because like he's such a melancholy kid, like right from the beginning. I mean, he's got that friend, but he even, I think, as I recall, was it he's the one who says that he's going to his family at the water, or was that his friend who said it?
His friend, I think. He
his friend who said it. Okay.
And then as he arrives there, he kind of walks in, and the family are leaving to go. And then
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has no, but like you say, it seems like a bit of a loner, and he goes to the football field, and the teacher's there, and no, there's no lessons now. And yeah, it's really quite sad, isn't it, that he. I don't know how common, because you made me think about the characters that do appear in it, and for example, any kind of American, British, kind of Western films, to see these kind of characters, it's not too unusual, and you think that's fair. They do exist, and they kind of exist in the kind of culture. Now, I'm less familiar with Japan and how these kind of outsiders are viewed by society. And would you say that's less, like for a Japanese person watching this film, would you say that these characters are even more kind of out there than we see them from a Western point of view?
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, because Japan is such a collective society, is so based on conformity. So like a lot of times the only place people really kind of see and interact with people like this is in movies. Like you don't really see them that much, and most people, if they would see people like Kikujiro, they'd walk on the other side of the street or that kind of thing.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. And because another reason why I guess a film like this is I've never been to Japan, but I'd love to go. And, it'd be one of those dreams. And even you see in films like you mentioned, we see Tokyo, we see the main things that they want to see in films. And to me, it just looks like they travel through the countryside. I actually mentioned to my wife recently. We were watching some films back from the early 90s, and I think it's just great when you don't have a mobile phone as the Deus Ex Machina, or for any kind of issues you might have in the film. It's just it's not even mentioned there. People don't look at them, and it's just so great. And now what's that? Watching Kikujiro, I think this is brilliant. They're walking. They can't phone a taxi. They can't call anybody. They just have to of this countryside, and to me, I think, oh, this looks amazing. But I don't know in Japan,
Mhm.
like can you tell where that was filmed, or is that quite common for you?
Well, I
What
don't
you
know where it was filmed, but I know that at least the neighborhood where they live in, it's Shitamachi, which is kind of like a lower income area of Tokyo,
Hmm.
I believe.
Right,
Um,
right.
and it was nice that they, yes, they live in this old area of Shitamachi, and I'm looking up here.
Hmm.
Yeah, so so it's like Yamanote and Shitamachi. Yamanote is like kind of like the high town area, and Shitamachi is
Yeah.
more like the low town area.
Hmm.
And that's kind of a very generalized idea, but still, even still, like Yamanote indicates like higher social status, and Shitamachi is a lower status. Um, it's not exactly completely accurate these days because of changing demographics and all that kind of thing, but yeah,
Yeah.
and but also this was made in 99, so that's another thing to consider as well. It's over 20 years ago. um
Hmm.
but yeah, so you get, and that is because usually you're right, usually when you see a lot of stuff, especially if you see Western stuff that's set in Japan, if
Hmm.
it's going to
Right.
be the modern day, it's almost always going to be like Tokyo, and it's always like all, and really people who have lived in Japan, they'll tell you that Tokyo is not like the rest of Japan. It's like Tokyo is kind of like its own country in itself.
Okay. Right, right. So yeah, that's and that made me think watching just that. It just I could really appreciate
Hmm.
kind of just like I said, the kind of the scenic side of all that.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, it was great, and it just in that kind of way mixed with the soundtrack as well.
Hmm.
It's just a really there's lots to be. Yeah, it I guess it covers a lot of areas. Like I say, it's quite sad, but at the same time, it's just a really kind of relaxing, calming kind of film at the same time. So
Yeah, something else
yeah,
you mentioned that I wanted to touch on was when you're talking about the kind of road trip aspect to it,
right.
and this is something as well that you don't really have in the West because of a lot of safety concerns. But hitchhiking is still very much a thing in Japan, and
Right.
in fact,
Okay.
I've had more than a few students who have talked about spending their summer hitchhiking all across Japan,
Right. Wow. That's
and just
fantastic.
kind of talking about like the type of people they meet along the way there. Like I've never done it myself, but just
Mm.
from knowing from their stories and what they've told me about it, it seems very much in the same vein, like the kind of weird people you meet along the way when you're
Right.
traveling like that, and it does have that kind of feel to it.
That's good. It reminds me, I had a friend who lived in Japan for a while. He was studying and working at some offices somewhere, and
Hmm.
I think he mentioned that they would ask him to spend time. If you probably know this is true or not, as with the work colleagues and become more sociable with them.
Hmm.
But he didn't really feel like that, and he would go hitchhiking, and he met these kind of these Japanese guys that were living somewhere, and they had the dreads, and they were really into
Hmm.
that kind of Rastafarian culture, and he spent most of his time with them, and they would just travel back through the countryside. So it kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, there's a
It
lot of
seems
those
quite
weird
sweet.
little pockets in Japan, especially in
Right,
the more rural areas. Like there's like kind of like a hippie commune around
right.
not that far from where I live, actually.
Okay.
Like
Wow.
this like commune of like all these artists and stuff who like live together, and they farm, and they run a restaurant and all that kind of stuff, and but mostly it's just people out there working on their art and holding like art shows and stuff, and it's really cool.
Wow, that sounds great.
Yeah. um let me see what other stuff I wanted to talk about here. There was that whole dream sequence that, well, he's got a few. Kikujiro goes through. I mean, not Kikujiro. Masao goes through has a few different
Mhm.
dreams that really kind of stand out. The one that really kind of stood out to me was the kind of one like the nightmare sequence where he's
Right.
got the
After. Mm-mm.
Right, where he's got the old pervert as like kind of like in this demonic role, and then he's got his mother in the traditional kimono and stuff, and she's got the tear running
Right.
down her cheeks, and he's chained up to this post. And I really like visually that was really striking, because especially because they use like a painted background, just like they
Right.
did in what was that old horror film, Qui-Gon? They did the same thing there.
Right, right. No, this went over my head. First time I watched it, which must have been 10 plus years ago.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't remember. I couldn't remember it, and it went straight over my head. But I really took notice this time round,
Mhm.
and I really appreciate these dream sequences. I thought it was great. Um, and similarly, the one towards the end really struck me as well, where is it? I think it was Marcel's dream sequence where it was them playing that game of,
Mhm.
turning around, and each time they went to the camera, they would, Kikujiro was dressed maybe as a samurai, each
Mhm.
four, and I don't know, because it felt like it was kind of rounding things off there, and it was really kind of as a kind of polar opposite to the earlier nightmare sequence.
Mhm.
It was a really positive one, and it just seemed at that point then there's just another one where that mixed with the music, it kind of just seemed to work with me, and it just kind of hit it like an emotional note
Mhm.
in a way. I couldn't specifically say why. It just kind of, after all that happened, and all these it's fun, and there was just something about that that was, I don't know how I don't know if you can maybe provide any more reference to the characters they were playing in that.
I'm not really sure. I think in general it was just kind of like this. I think he was kind of just casting these characters as, almost like his heroes in a way.
Right, right,
And that
okay,
that that was kind of the way I took it. I
okay.
mean, that might be overly simplistic, but that's kind of what I felt it was. And especially when you compare it to the earlier dream sequence where, he's chained, he's restrained, right? Which
Right. Mm,
kind of feels like that's how he feels in life, right? Like
sure.
his mother's right there. He can't reach her, he can't talk to her, he can't touch
Mhm,
her. And he's imagining it's sad for her as well, with that tear running down her cheek. And
mm,
you got
right.
the molester. He kind of represents like just all these forces trying to keep him apart from his mother.
Mm, mm,
And
mm.
that's kind of what I took from that. And then at the end, his mother, because he finds out that in the nightmare he's still holding out this hope that his mother would accept him if she could, but she
Right,
can't,
right.
right? That's why you got the tear running down her face. But then when he
Mhm.
actually sees her and he sees that she's got this whole other family,
Right,
he
right.
kind of realizes that, oh, I'm not wanted anymore. And
Mm,
even the most positive aspect of that nightmare was fake.
right, yes. And then at the end, then of course, then she doesn't no longer featuring in his dream sequences,
Hmm.
just the people that have kind of brought him that happiness throughout that
Right.
summer, which
And this
is
is how we see when Kikujiro really starts to come around to him, right? He does that. He says to, he's like, oh, it must be a different person,
mm,
right? Which is,
right. And he realizes that point then, um, that he has to
mhm.
kind of help him out really, because I guess that point you do see that shot of Kikujiro, and that realization dawns on him, and he goes back, and that's when he really makes that effort. He goes to the biker guys, and that's that point where he
Mhm.
does turn around. But like, yeah, the first time out, it just didn't it kind of went more over my head, and this time it really
Mhm.
kind of made much more sense.
Yeah, there was also the whole idea about the angel wings. You got the angel bell as well, like, because I thought that
Right,
was
yeah.
that was something that really kind of stood out. I'm not really sure what to make of them
Right,
exactly.
right.
I think maybe you could look at it and kind of like they're saviors for him, is the only thing I
Mm,
could really think of, because you got the juggler who puts the wings on his backpack, and
right.
then you've got Kikujiro who brings him the angel bell. So I think it's kind of like that savior aspect, like they're kind of rescuing him, is the only thing I could
Right.
really think of.
Yeah, because yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it did. I did wonder that, because it did make a big. They got the angel bell, it got the wings in the backpack, and there was just that unusual kind of graphic.
Hmm.
Just kind of it did, not that it didn't fit with the film, but then I thought, is it bringing more attention to that than I'm really paying it? But perhaps
Hmm.
not. Then that's just I think on a simpler level, yeah, it's
Mhm.
like we're saying from that point of view, just as their saviors.
Right.
No,
And I just gotta say, I love that sequence with the juggler's boyfriend, where they're giving him the money, and he just does the robot thing.
yes, yeah,
So eventually
yeah,
he quote unquote breaks down at the end.
yeah, no. Yeah, that was one of the bits I vaguely remembered some points since the
Mm.
first time I watched it, and that was one of them too. Just the juggler's boyfriend, and what else was it now? No, I can't remember. There's another bit about it. I just can't remember.
Mm.
No, that was a great sequence. No,
Well,
I
I
can't.
like that. Like, one of the things that stood out to me, and I didn't realize this the first time, but the second time, it really kind of jumped out to me. The title cards, right, where it's like, uh, it's basically like you're looking at, essentially what you're doing is you're looking at a child's "What I Did Last Summer" book.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No, I forgot about those.
Mhm.
Yes, I didn't. Yeah, like, first time I didn't see that, and this time around, yes, um, that was an interesting little thing. So
Mhm.
it almost like looking back retrospectively after this, I suppose. It's a funny. I guess is you're looking at it, it's a funny time thing, isn't it? Because it's happening, but it's almost like he's looking at it as it was the the book in a
Right.
way.
Well, because also you never get a sense of what Masao is thinking. Like, he's a very quiet character. He doesn't emote a
Mhm.
whole lot, so you don't really get a whole sense of what he's feeling. You're kind of disconnected from him in a way. You
Yeah, it
see
does feel
more
that.
of Kikujiro, but even still, like, Kitano plays him in kind of a very stoic way a lot of the times too. And so it does
Mm.
almost feel like you're picking up this picture book and you're looking through it.
Yeah, no, that's the nice part. Yeah, because the like you say, the dialogue, the very little dialogue comes from
Mhm.
Masao, like, and yeah, I guess you have to infer from like you say, just the
Mhm.
images, what you're supposed to be feeling or what's supposed to be happening, and which is, I mean, that's great in some ways as too. I mean, if you're kind of fresh to,
Mhm.
I mean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to know the language. Is one thing you can appreciate it from that kind of level too. I guess
You're
if
right, actually, and that kind of brings me back to Hanabi as well, where because that was also a um, very sparse dialogue in that movie too, and
mm,
it does feel like you could watch these movies without subtitles, without knowing the
mm.
language, and you could still generally follow them pretty well.
Yeah, that's true. The last time I watched Hanabi,
Mhm.
um, that's when I noticed a lot of the scenes from Takeshi. I guess it's working from, I suppose in a way, not the way that Mr. Bean is very
Mhm.
popular. It's universal
Right.
because
Yeah.
just the way it works and his comedy works. And I suppose Takeshi Kitano, coming from that comedy background,
Mhm.
he can definitely put energy into a scene
Mhm.
and meaning, like you say, without language itself. And you get, and he does that quite often in does that is that bit in Hanabi, um, where there's a guy waiting in the car and
Mhm.
it pretends to shoot him and stuff. So there's that understanding, like no language it takes place,
Mhm.
but each other understands each other, what they're doing, the kind of game they're playing. And I
Right.
guess he does like to inject that in a lot of his scenes. So
Mhm.
um, no, that's true.
Yeah,
And
that was something that stood out to me a lot more the second time around. And then when they do finally get back to Shitamachi, that's really like the first time you really see Masao really show any emotion.
yes, yeah, and I think that works really well.
Mhm.
It really has like made an impact on him. The same for Kikujiro too.
Mhm.
He actually smiles at him. He tells it because it kind of you don't know his name, Kikujiro. I guess even though the film's called that, he doesn't really tell him his name
No, we
until
never find out his name until that moment at the end, because like
oh,
even his wife, she never calls him by his name. When she goes to the grandmother, she says, my husband is
mm,
taking him out to the sea or something like that.
mm. So I'm not sure. Well, what do you think Kitano's intention was with I was trying to think of what.
I don't know. I was just thinking about that myself. I'm
Hmm.
honestly not really sure what he was trying to intend. But it is kind of funny the way that Kitano delivers the line at the end. Because it's just kind of like, what, it's almost as kind of like, my name, you idiot.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's
So
good. And
I
that's
think it is. I don't know. Maybe it's because I have definitely had these experiences where I've worked with people for years and haven't known their name, and eventually you get to a point where it's like you're too afraid to ask now.
right. Right. No, yeah, that was good. Really good. And yeah, and slightly just touched on it before, just the whole soundtrack for the
Hmm.
film. Um, it's just great. And I suppose the main theme, it's called Summer, isn't it? The actual, I think
Yeah,
that,
Kikujiro no Natsu. So it's Kikujiro's summer.
yeah, and the main by Joe Hisaishi, we actually that was always something since the first time I saw the film. That's kind of something I've always listened to and I really appreciate. And we actually had that as our kind of wedding
Oh,
music
really?
too. Funnily enough, yeah,
Yeah,
because
the
they
music. I really did like the music in this. That main
yeah,
theme that comes back in several
that's the one,
times.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it works really well.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, that's and I think from this film, I've always been a huge fan of Joe Hisaishi's music.
Hmm.
Even Hanabi and on all the Miyazaki he did, this is still one of the ones that just really
It's
fits.
Yeah, it stands out a lot. Just
Yeah,
looking up what else he's done.
it
Because
was.
I know I've seen a lot of his other stuff. So he's done a lot of Kitano stuff.
Oh yeah, almost all of that. He's
Yeah.
done lots of Spirited Away. So those are the Ghibli stuff.
Hmm.
Pretty much all of that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Nausicaa,
right.
My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery
Mhm.
Service, um, Princess Mononoke, of course, probably the one people are
Right,
most
right.
familiar. But yeah, looks like he's done pretty much. It seems like all his stuff. It's either working for Miyazaki or working for Kitano.
Yeah, no, it's great. I can listen to his stuff just like all
Mhm.
day long.
Yeah, very,
Mm,
very wonderful compositions in this.
mm.
And he was actually awarded a Medal of Honor by by the Japanese government in 2009.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, amazing. That is fantastic. Yeah, what else have we got to? What else would you like to say about? Um,
Um, I'm not sure.
I'm
I
trying
think
to
we
think
kind of
about.
touched on really all the main points of
Hmm.
it. The alienation thing really interested me a lot, and I wish, and I know we get quite a bit of it, but I feel like there's well, no, I'm not. I'm kind of losing my train there, but I did like that part at the end when he does. It's it is really like the first time Masao smiles and shows any emotion. It
Hmm.
is, and it is kind of like this. Maybe here's something. This just occurred to me thinking about the name thing because he knows his mother, he knows her name and everything. He feels this connection to her, but he never. But then he finds out that connection is basically useless. Or then with his friend, right, or his teacher, right? There's the whole
Hmm.
thing like he knows their names and all that, but they're not there when he really needs them.
Right, right,
And then you've got all these people he meets along the way, and he doesn't know any of them, and they're the ones who are there for him.
right.
So maybe it's kind of symbolic of that in some way.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's funny as well with the people he meets along the way. He doesn't learn names. I doesn't learn their names either. Mr. Nice Guy,
Hmm.
or names don't seem to be real names anyway. Don't seem to be any kind of focus
Right.
of anybody. Even in his picture book, Scary Man, like you say, Mr. Nice Guy, and the only name
Hmm.
that really we do here is Kikujiro's name. That's the genuine name.
Yeah, those are the only names we see. They're all
Mm.
like just looking at the cast list. It's all just you have Kikujiro. You have his mother's name Satoko, which he does know his mother's name because he does mention that point. She's Satoko
Right.
Sugiyama. But like his wife never gets a name. Masao's grandmother never gets a name. All the
Mm.
people that are important to him never
Yeah.
really get a name until Kikujiro kind of crosses that at the end, and it kind of person and and it's kind of, and I think that also adds some more impact to the Kitano's delivery of it at the end, right?
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
well, why are you asking me? It doesn't matter, kind of thing as well.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Actually,
Mhm.
after all this, yeah, that's a good point.
So, but yeah, any final thoughts about this movie?
I just I don't know. It's, what can I say? It's just I don't know. I try and recommend this film to people that when they talk about watching Japanese films
Mm-hmm.
and maybe just get them in there. And then, like I said before, I thought, oh, I don't know. I felt like the other day I started watching, I thought, oh, would I still recommend this?
Mm-hmm.
But then, really, at the end, I still would. I think it's a great, well, the visuals, the soundtrack, especially,
Mm-hmm.
and just the theme behind it. I think it's something that I would still recommend to people, just as a great example of
Mm-hmm.
Takeshi Kitano's kind of work.
I'm not sure if I would recommend this as someone's first Kitano film, because I did notice that
Okay.
the international reception of this was kind of lukewarm. Like it had like something like a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
so I think I would recommend this to someone who's either more already predisposition to liking this style of filmmaking, like this kind of more introspective, this quieter
Yeah,
style.
there is that. Yeah.
Um, Otherwise, I think I would probably recommend something a little bit more mainstream, like I keep coming. I don't know if that's the best choice, but I keep coming back to Outrage. Um,
Outrage is great.
it
Outrage
is a
is really
great
good.
movie, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, something I'd give people something a little bit more mainstream as their first
Right.
introduction to
I
Kitano's
suppose
film.
Sonatines it could be a good way between that. Outrage is
Sonatine,
really kind of
yeah, yes, because Outrage is very much it's
very
very
gangster, very
very gangster,
hardcore.
very
Yeah.
very kind of mainstream gangster film, and he was just and Kitano even said that his whole goal with this was I just kind of wanted to make a fun mainstream movie,
Right.
and which is kind of cool. Like I do like the way that he does challenge himself in those ways, because this one, his whole idea with this movie was he wanted to challenge himself to make a family friendly movie.
Right. Okay.
So it is cool to see him like challenging himself in these different ways, and I see
Yeah.
that with you see that with a lot of Japanese directors actually. Like they don't work, they're not restrictive really. Well, they can't be really, because it's not like in America where you can have a Quentin Tarantino who makes a movie once every 10 years or whatever. Um,
Right.
in Japan, if you're a working director, you are a working director. It's pretty much all there is to it. You've got to keep making movies,
Right.
and
Okay.
and you see that because there are a lot of and you see that with a lot of these directors. You look at their filmography and you see there's all these really disparate choices. It's like Mike is a perfect example of it, where like
I was
he'll
gonna say,
do,
yeah.
yeah, because he'll do like he'll do a hardcore over the top bloody horror movie, and then he'll go do a kids fantasy adventure movie. And
Right. Yeah. And then he has those ones. I mean, I like I say, I got into him with Ichi the Killer, and
mm.
then found his Happiness the Katakuris, and I was like, wow, this is like totally off the wall.
is
But
that
I
the
loved it.
is that the musical one?
That's right.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
not quite family friendly. It goes a little bit way there, and it's
Right.
some of it funny, but it has also that kind of horror element to it.
Mm-hmm.
On the edge of it. But that's a great. And then I'd watched it's a samurai film. It's a brilliant samurai film, fairly recent. What's it called? 13 Assassins.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I hadn't realized that. I was like, oh, wow, because I kind of not paid much attention to it as much. Like, wow, this is a great samurai film. And then he did one more recently, which was a kind of, I started to watch it, and I've not finished it, but it's a samurai one that then moves into the supernatural.
Oh, I'm not sure, but he did also do Blade of the Immortal too.
Yes, he did. Yes, he
Yeah.
did. So it just
Um,
like it just keeps on working.
he's just his filmography, and he just basically started in like 1991, but his movies, it's just he's done like over 200 movies now, I think.
Right. Yeah, and I've noticed when you like you say you look at IMDb and think, oh, all these ones between they say they just work and churn out
Mm-hmm.
next film, which is
Yeah.
great. I mean, there's always a lot to watch there.
Was that
Um,
one maybe? I'm just looking at the titles. That one Harakiri maybe?
no, it may have been. I know the English title.
Death of a Samurai.
I don't think it's that one.
Okay, all right.
I'll see if I can find it quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Get back to me and let me know what that one is. But
yeah,
but
it
he
began. Sorry.
no, I'm sorry. Just saying, like it's just his like he just has this amazing diversity in his work, and you do see a lot of that in Kitano too. Although Kitano does have a lot more consistency in his movies. Like you're watching a Miike movie, you may not always know it's a Miike movie.
That's why I was surprised when I watched that samurai one, because it was
Mhm.
just so. It was so historical and so not as off the wall wacky. You saw not even that much violence, to be honest. Like
Mhm.
Miike's films are like ultra violent,
Mhm.
and this one was just great, really really good. The samurai one.
Mhm.
I'm gonna quick look now. Maybe it's not as that doesn't seem to be in order.
But yeah, and like I was surprised too when I found out he did the which we also talked about this season, the movie version of Yakuza Like a Dragon, based on the video
Um,
game.
oh right. Ah, okay. No, I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, but so like his stuff is very it wasn't that great. But you when the episodes come out, you'll be able to hear all about it.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of his stuff, it's his he doesn't have as much of like you can if you've watched enough of his movies, you can kind of tell. But when you're watching a Kitano movie, you know you're watching a Kitano movie. Like he's got a very distinctive feel in all his movies. I noticed.
Absolutely. And I think as well, if you just heard Kitano film, you just know straight
Mhm.
away because the music just comes through. You know straight away it's a John
Yeah,
Station.
yeah. Okay, Dan. Any final things you wanted to say before we wrap up? Anything you wanted to kind of promote to people or direct people if they want
Um,
to find you online or
of
anything?
course. I mean, as well, we're on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, which is it began as a kind of like a unboxing kids channel, but now we kind of
Mhm.
do crafting. There's not much in the way of well, we've done a few like of those Japanese kind of snack boxes, but nothing
Oh,
much.
okay.
Yeah, we're called SuperMakerUniverse.
Okay.
So you want to come and check that out, you can do. It's we do all sorts of bits and bobs here and there, but it's just a bit of fun that we like to involve the kids in sometimes.
That's good.
Um, and that's it, really. It's
Okay.
been a pleasure doing this. I mean, I can talk for hours and hours about all sorts of Japanese films, and it's been a while since like I've had to kind of get my head back into the gear with things because it's just the time these days I have is minimal. We're just so busy, but it's
Yeah.
been great to talk about it. And as I get more time, I'm going to try and revisit some of the older films and
Mhm.
also visit new ones maybe you've mentioned and see what else I can discover that's
Yeah, well,
it's
I mean, we've got we're up to I think 30, 40 some episodes now, so we got tons of recommendations
right.
out
Yeah,
on the feed. So,
yeah. Well, I was
oh,
doing some painting at home and I had them on in the background, so when I get a chance,
mhm.
I'll re-catch up and see what I can find.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been nice having you on for finally after numerous attempts at rescheduling and whatnot. So glad we were finally able to make it happen.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So that does it for this episode of Japan on Film. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. The next episode, I believe we're going to be discussing, and as I mentioned in the last episode, sometimes the schedule is changing everything. But right now, at the time I'm recording this, the plan is for the next episode to be covering the Yellow Handkerchief. So we're going to cover that next week. And until then, head on over to japanonfilm.com as our website. You can find us at Japan on Film on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook, just Japan on Film. We got a Facebook group as well. Feel free to join in. Feel free to please review the show if you like it. Please recommend it to your friends, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching this episode of Japan on Film. For more of our videos, just hit the subscribe button.